Hi, and welcome to another Business Tube podcast, and this time we are continuing with section 4 and we're looking at stock and stock control charts. It'll be a very quick session, guys, on stock control charts, but before we get started, I just want you to have a think about the kind of stock that a business might need to keep in their warehouse. A warehouse just being a big space where the business keeps either raw materials, which we've got on here, so raw materials ready to go into production, so ready to be used in the production process. But we also have the finished products coming out of the other side as well. And if they're not going to be transported straight away to the customer, then these finished goods need to be stored somewhere, ready to be shipped and ready to be transported to the customer. And we also have work in progress, which is the stuff in the middle that's kind of going through the production process, and maybe that needs to be held somewhere and stored. So all of these things businesses need to keep stocks of. However, I really want you to think about this one as the main thing that businesses need to store in their warehouse. And this is the raw materials, the components ready to go into the production process. It starts at the beginning and goes into the production process, and this needs to be stored. This is basically the opposite of JIT that we looked at in the last podcast, because with JIT, we don't have a warehouse. So with JIT, the raw materials come just in time. That's what JIT stands for, just in time for production. Whereas with this one, we're not having raw materials come just in time. We're having the raw materials come nice and early, but because they come nice and early, we've got to store them somewhere, and they have to be stored in the warehouse, ready to be used in the production process. So with a warehouse, what we will have is a stock control graph that looks like this. Now, this is basically representing our warehouse. And what I want to draw your attention to first of all are the axes. Now on here we have the amount of stock that is in the warehouse. So 1,000 boxes or components, whatever it is in the warehouse, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. So this is the amount, and across the bottom we have the time going along here. So 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks going along here. Now what this one is here, this is showing the amount of stock that is in the warehouse. And as time goes by, as we start moving along time, going along a week, the amount of stock in the warehouse is going down. The reason for that is obviously because it's being used, so it's being taken out of the warehouse into the factory and into the production process. So the amount of stock that's in the warehouse is going down. I want you to have a little think about what happens at this point here, and at this point here the stock suddenly goes up. Now the reason why the stock suddenly goes up is because the stock has been delivered from the supplier. So we're using the stock's going down. All of a sudden, the lorry comes from our supplier. They offload that into our warehouse, and the amount of stock in our warehouse goes up. Then over time, we're using the stock, and then a new supply comes and it goes up. What we have on here is the lead time, okay? Now, before I do that, actually, guys, I'll draw your attention to these. So the maximum stock level is the maximum amount of stock that either we want in our warehouse or the maximum amount of stock that our warehouse can hold. So this is a maximum amount of stock we can have at any given point in time. This is our reorder level. So basically, when our stock gets down to this point, we pick up the phone, we call our supplier, and we ask for more stock to be delivered. So if we order it at this point here, hopefully you can see that. So if we order it right here, when the stock gets down to this line, we keep using it, and then it arrives here. And this is what we call the lead time. The lead time is basically the amount of time it takes from calling the supplier and saying, Mr. Supplier, I want more supplies, and the amount of time it takes for them to deliver it. Because it's going to take time for your supplier to get the supplies together, put it onto a truck, and actually deliver that to you. And this is what we call the lead time. So here we call the supplier, here it arrives, and the lead time is the amount of time that it takes for those supplies to arrive. The minimum amount of stock is the minimum amount of stock we ever want to have or to be holding before we go into our buffer stock. And our buffer stock is basically what I like to call the emergency stock. So we shouldn't be using this buffer stock. This buffer stock is there just in case we have some sort of problem and we have emergency stock to be able to use. The reorder amount, well, if we had, let's say this is 1,000 on here. So if we have 1,000 in there for the buffer stock, the reorder amount, it goes up to 4,000. So 4,000 minus the 1,000 that we already had in the warehouse means that the reorder amount is 3,000. So when the stock arrives, we go up from 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 to 4,000. We've gone up 3,000 units. That means when we called our supplier at this point, we called and asked them for 3,000 units to be delivered, and that is our reorder quantity. Okay, so I'll just go over these with you now. Stock level, this is the amount of stock currently held by the business. Minimum stock level, maximum stock level is a maximum quantity of stock to be held in the warehouse at any one point in time. The reorder level is the stock level reached at which the supplies are reordered, so that's the point we call our supplier and order new supplies. Minimum stock level is the minimum amount of stock the company wants to have before using its buffer stock. The buffer stock is a quantity of stock held just in case, and like I said before, for emergencies. Maybe your supplier's late, or maybe you're just super busy. Yeah, you need to have that emergency stock there, and the lead time is the amount of time it takes from picking up the phone to the supplies actually arriving from your supplier. I'll quickly go over this one then, guys. So the questions on here, first of all, this is the maximum stock level again. Here is our reorder level. This is the minimum stock level, and then we have the buffer stock down here. The lead time is from there to there, so we make the call here, the stock arrives here, and I would say that is roughly 3 to 4 days is the lead time there. How much stock does arrive? What is the reorder quantity? Well, if we have 500 stock in the warehouse, and when we order the stock it goes up to 2,000, 2,000 minus the 500 we already have means our reorder quantity is 1,500. Here, if you can see, our stock went down and we ran out of stock, and the business ran out of raw materials for about 3 days, 2 to 3 days, which means if they've run out of stock, they have no stock available for production, which therefore means production has stopped, and no business wants production to stop. That is very, very bad news indeed. Why might that have happened? Well, either they were super busy, and when they called their supplier, they just used more raw materials than they had, or their supplier was late. And if their supplier was late, that's why it went up there. So in order for this business to fix this situation, it can either raise its buffer stock, so it has more emergency stock available. It could reorder earlier, so order earlier and then you're not going to run out of stock, or raise the reorder level so that we order supplies sooner. We cannot have a business running out of stock, and if you see here, they almost ran out of stock as well. You should not be using your buffer stock. That is there for emergencies. Okay, I think that is pretty much it on, okay, I'll just go over this last slide actually. So the problems of holding stock, like we said before when we looked at JIT, if you have a warehouse, it's very, very expensive to have a warehouse. You need to pay rent on a warehouse, electricity and security on a warehouse. Stock can get damaged in a warehouse. If it's metal, it can rust. If it's food, it can go bad and not be fresh any longer. It can become out of trend or obsolete. For example, fashion changes. You don't want to be stuck with a load of stock that nobody wants. So if the fashion changes, you might be stuck with a load of old fashion that nobody wants to buy. And these are the problems with holding stock. Okay, hope you found that useful, guys. See you next time.